I'm Denelle Chapman. I was diagnosed in 2024, April 3rd, with, um, at the time we thought it was, we weren't really sure. The staging actually kind of took a long time. So that's kind of part of the beginning of the story. But ultimately, I was diagnosed with stage 3B rectal cancer, and I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So um, kind of started at my local hospital and then ended up getting a second opinion at Mayo in Rochester. So I've kind of been bouncing between Rochester and my hometown for treatments. And um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. My symptoms actually started, I would probably say a bit over a year ago. So back in 2023, the fall sometime, I kind of started noticing some more like irregularity with my bowels. I eventually started bleeding pretty frequently with going to the bathroom and the sensation of not kind of fully emptying my colon, I guess, when going to the bathroom. So I initially thought, I feel like a lot of people, I thought it was hemorrhoids. I even kind of joked, like, oh my gosh, I'm going down this spiral. I think I might, maybe I have cancer. And it was a joke at the time. But um, in this case, I feel like my anxiety actually kind of helped me because I was like, I just, need to figure this out for sure. I'm just going to go to the doctor and like have her kind of calm some of these thoughts I was having. So I went to my general practitioner, I think in January of last year in 2024. And she kind of did an initial exam. She didn't really see anything. She thought maybe I had like inflammatory bowel, but she wasn't exactly sure. So she referred me to GI. Um, she said they could do like some more tests in their office that she couldn't do. So I got that referral pretty quickly. I ended up seeing a GI doctor, I think, in like February. So shortly after that. And then they asked me a bunch of questions. I was still kind of bleeding at the time. So they said, yeah, we have like enough here to go and do a colonoscopy. So we had that scheduled for early April. And yeah, the procedure itself is pretty smooth. But yeah, then woke up, had the doctor come in, um, kind of did his spiel about this is the worst part of my job. We found something. We're like 99% sure it's cancer. But of course, they needed to confirm the biopsy before kind of referring me on then to oncology and the surgeons and everything. So that's kind of where everything started. I think in that moment, I was in shock. I think I could not even process it. I mean, I did get a little emotional. I remember just like the nurse like rubbing my back, and it almost felt like I was like the last appointment of the day. So they're like, take your time. And then I was kind of just walking out of the clinic, like this dark clinic. I feel like um, I was, I have a son. And so my parents were actually like kind of helping out by like watching him after school that day. So I was like, how do I even tell my parents when I haven't even like processed this myself? So yeah, just like a lot of thoughts of um, almost an out of body experience too. Like he was saying oncologist, and I was like, oncologist, like that's for people that have cancer, like not somebody, not me. Like I know you found something, but it wasn't quite computing at that time. So yeah, definitely. I I'm a counselor, and I can kind of recognize like the stages of grief. And yeah, in hindsight, I was like, yep, that was definitely a shock moment. And even still, I'm kind of, I feel like, you know, this almost distance between like even saying like I have cancer is sometimes difficult for me. I'm just like I have this thing that I'm dealing with, but that's this protection, I guess, that I'm keeping some distance from it. The staging process took a long time initially, so I got referred to a colorectal surgeon, and I saw her first, and she I think did like a sigmoid flex scope at our meeting, and so she was able to kind of get eyes on it. She's the one that ordered like my initial scans, the CT and the MRI. Um, the MRI actually looked pretty promising as far as the rectal tumor was. It was kind of looking like stage one, maybe early stage two. I had two lymph nodes that maybe like met one of the criteria, but they didn't meet the full criteria for being positive. So I had that. They also did find some lesions on my liver initially through the CT scan. So then I also then had an MRI of my abdomen to kind of further characterize, and they were pretty convinced that I was stage four initially because of that. So they did a biopsy of one of the lesions. To our great surprise and delight, it came back benign. I had this condition called focal nodular hyperplasia, I believe it's called, which is pretty common for especially women and especially of childbearing age that have been on some kind of birth, like hormonal birth control. Those can pop up. It's still pretty rare, but in my case, that's kind of what happened. But it definitely complicated the staging process and kind of drew that out. So after that, that kind of all took about a month, I would say, from like the initial scans. And so since they said I was likely in the earlier stages, that would mean they would do surgery first. So they wanted to do the I always mix these up. The lower anterior resection they wanted to do. And initially I was kind of like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. As I kind of sat with it, I think in my gut, I was just like, this is a major surgery. They're going to take out part of my body. I'm going to be changed after this. And I had actually joined Colon Town. That community actually kind of urged me to get a second opinion because they were like, yeah, this just doesn't seem right to do surgery first. So that's when we kind of looked into Mayo, and they ultimately suggested I go the TNT route, the total neoadjuvant treatment route, which is usually like some kind of combination of radiation and chemo. So they said I was a candidate for watch and wait because my tumor was like in the mid to low. It didn't affect my sphincter. Um, so I ended up doing the month-long chemo radiation. So I took Xylota, the chemo pills, while I was getting radiation. Had some repeat scans. They said the tumor had shrunk pretty significantly, and then that kind of gave the go-ahead to start chemo. So I did chemo here at home because chemo is chemo, and I kind of just wanted to be close to home. Um, and then midway through my chemo, I had another set of repeat scans at Mayo, and they deemed it a complete response at that time, which was very surprising to me. They said, we recommend you still kind of finish up the chemo. So I still had 4 more rounds to go after that. So I'm all done with chemo now and, kind of starting the surveillance process. I had this idea that, you kind of have this condition, you go see a doctor, they give you a treatment plan, and things are more or less there's an answer or there's like this route that you can go. And I feel like with cancer, it's always kind of, we can try this, we can do this. There's a lot, it seems like there's just so many more options and decisions to make, which was kind of intimidating at first because you kind of get these thoughts of how do I know I'm making the right decision? My life is kind of on the line here. So I feel like the stakes are high, which I feel like all the more reason to get more opinions, to find a doctor that you feel safe with. I think that was a big thing for me. My first oncologist, at least to me, kind of felt a little pessimistic, kind of grim. And then I found doctors that were like, no, we're going to cure this. And like, you're going to live a long time. And, just somebody that I felt safe asking questions, kind of putting my life, I guess, in their hands more or less. So I'd say find a doctor that has the same goals as you. You know, if they say like, you know what, um, yeah, surgery or even chemo for life, if you're stage 4, like I think if that's not something you're willing to do, I think it's absolutely valid to find somebody that aligns more with your goals. And it can be a little bit of work up front, but I feel like it was 1,000% worth it. Like I wouldn't change that for the world. So I have no regrets in that way. To start off with radiation, and in most cases, I feel like both kinds of treatment are cumulative. So in the beginning, you might experience some, but as time goes on, I felt it did get a little bit worse in both situations. As far as radiation went, I experienced just more, like way more frequency. I had to make sure like I knew where the bathroom was at all times. I think I had this condition called proctitis where it kind of is like a spasm almost, where it feels like you just have to go, but nothing really happens. Um, a little bit of pain towards the end. Um, but I feel like about a week or so after I had finished things, I was starting to notice I was getting back to normal after radiation. The chemo pills, luckily, I didn't have too many side effects. I kind of noticed a little bit of nausea if I didn't eat when I took them. Just maybe feeling like a little bit off. But in a lot of ways, I feel like I handled radiation pretty well. And to your point where you said the treatments are so great. Yeah, I feel like everyone was like, you look so great. Like, you don't look like a cancer patient, too. So I can empathize with that when um, you're not necessarily feeling your best, but to everyone else, you kind of look the same, or like no one would know necessarily unless you had a conversation with them. But um, then starting chemo, I feel like it was pretty similar. Like the first couple rounds, I definitely noticed a little bit of neuropathy, some cold sensitivity, which are very common side effects with. I ended up doing Folfox, so that's like the 3-drug regimen. That oxaliplatin is the the bad one that kind of gives you some of those gnarlier side effects like the cold sensitivity and the neuropathy. Um, um, Definitely some nausea. Um, I I feel like towards the end I was really ready to be done. I feel like chemo was a little bit harder for me than the radiation was. Maybe it was because of like the time, it kind of took 4 or 5 months to get through the 8 rounds. Um, and there was kind of that mind game where like you're finally starting to feel better and then you go in for your next round and you're kind of just experiencing that all over again. So I feel like I'm kind of far out from it now that I'm feeling a little bit more normal, kind of getting most of my energy back. I was pretty fatigued from the full fox. I guess my doctor here kind of reframed it in a nice way. He's like, well, your body is reacting. So that means, for better or worse, like if you're experiencing these side effects, then we know that your body is responding in some way. So I think that kind of helped me get through it a little bit more. I feel like the mental part of this has been much harder than any of the physical stuff. Especially in the beginning, I was really in a dismal place. I feel like every time I kind of looked at my kid, I was wondering, like, am I going to be around? Like, am I going to meet these milestones? So that was the hardest part for me. Um, that eventually became my biggest motivator to get through this. But yeah, initially, and I feel like a lot of cancer folks can relate, like the beginning when there's still so much unknown and you're going through all these scans and you're just like that scan anxiety is a common term I hear. I still experience that. Every scan I have is really hard. I do have a therapist. I feel very lucky that I had one kind of before all this. So she has been, an absolute like wonderful resource that I've had through this. Just kind of having a space to like dump all of the worries, and I ended up doing like some EMDR as well with some of just the health trauma, I guess. So that was very helpful. And then just having the community of like Colon Town and then friends and family, like having a good support system, I feel like is really, really like half the battle and kind of dealing with a lot of this really heavy stuff, even if you don't necessarily talk about what you're feeling, just knowing somebody else is there and, in Colin Town, like they know exactly what you're feeling. So I think just knowing that you're not alone has been what's gotten me through a lot of it in the beginning, at least. It is a very different space. I don't know if it's better or worse, but there's definitely still challenges. I feel like when I kind of got to celebrate this awesome news that I had halfway through, it was kind of just like, um, at least like my perception was kind of like, oh, well, you're good now. Like you beat it. Like you're done. Um, and for me, I almost felt like that's when I needed the most support. Was I still had the rest of treatment to get through, and those were arguably some of the harder rounds because like things were accumulating. I was feeling worse, and now you're kind of just living with this ever-present thought of, what if it comes back? What if it comes back somewhere else? My schedule is every 3 months. I go to Mayo. I get a CT, an MRI, a flex sig, to see if anything is there. And the second they see something, then they'll schedule a surgery. So that is pretty typical for a watch and wait schedule. So this is going to be for 2 years. So I feel like with most cancers, even when you reach that NED or that remission stage, you're still at least like kind of 5 years still going to the oncologist, still having appointments. So it doesn't really feel over to us, even though maybe it does to others. But so yeah, after the first 2 years, if everything's good, then I'll move to every 6 months. But yeah, I still have 5 years at least left in this journey. I definitely feel like there's like this BC, this before cancer person who maybe like took their health for granted, worrying about silly things, not maybe being as present as I wanted, just getting caught up in like the way our society is. I feel like after, you're really kind of forced to sit in this space of unknown and being present. So I feel, I think I heard something like somebody who's healthy wishes for 1,000 things, somebody who's not wishes for one thing. So I very much felt that for a long time of, my only wish is to just be healthy and stick around and be here for my kid, watch my kid grow up. So I feel like it makes your priorities pretty crystal clear after the fact. You kind of like, wow, yeah, this is what's important to me. And, um, even like the people, like who am I surrounding myself with? Do I have the energy? Because now this is kind of a limited resource on like my social energy, my mental energy. I want to make sure that I have um, like the people and the stuff in my life that I really want to be intentional with. And for me, that has been like a blessing, really, out of all of this. Um, so yeah, I'm still kind of figuring out like who is this person? Is she bitter? Is she mad all the time? Maybe there's like still some of that, but um, I like to think there's still some parts of me that I can carry through, and that will hopefully help me like rebuild this new person. Literally and figuratively, trust your guts. It does no harm to make, just a simple appointment with your like general practitioner. I know for some of us younger folks, we can get written off a little bit for cancer symptoms. So I'd say if you're getting an answer that you don't feel 100% isn't sitting with you, get a second opinion, push for what you feel, until you feel like you get an answer that makes sense. Get a second opinion. Have somebody to talk to. I know like that is not always accessible for everybody, and I think it should be. But if you can find any kind of space, community, um, to feel your feelings, to feel like somebody gets it, I would recommend like that's going to be the most important part to get you through that. Lean on your loved ones, ask for help, accept the help. That is something that was really hard for me. It's accepting it. Even though we are all kind of going through this, everyone's story is so unique and different. So just kind of getting like that well-rounded experience, I think has been really helpful too, to know what options are even out there.